Okay, hello everyone. Nice to meet you. Nice to be here in Kiev, Ukraine. Um, we had some numbers previously. We had some tough knowledge. Thanks for my predecessor to do that. Very, very useful. I'll try to concentrate on the topic that I'm active for several years now, which is intellectual capital, analysis, valuation, and so on. I want you to remember this phrase, take nothing for granted, because this is what we encountered that we have to do when we, from business valuation, from stock valuation, we went into the separate asset, especially intellectual capital asset valuation, okay? I will try to discuss it later, okay? First of all, 2 minutes for the entities that I'm involved in. CFA Society Poland was established in 2004. We have more than 600 members, CFA charter holders. What's more, CFA Institute Research Challenge, we participate since 2010 actually, sorry for the mistake. We had the global winners in 2013, so we like this this program, this challenge, and also many other initiatives are being done. CFA Ethics Challenge, I know that in Ukraine also was introduced last year. Why I'm talking about that? Because it actually helps. Okay, if you're a student, if you were a student, you probably had a chance to be involved. Obviously, competition, this is one thing, but networking and getting to work with real problems, is the second thing. Second entity, which is Brante Partners, which was established by me and my friend in 2012. As it said, we are a business advisory company. We deal with technology commercialization, early stage project funding, and European Union funds, providing for early stage companies. We perform more than 200 analysis and IP valuation for scientific institutions, startup and spin-off companies. We raised also more than 60 million euro for the R&D projects. So I think that I can put some valuable insight into the early stage, and especially if we are talking about the technologies and the intellectual assets, if they're concerned. Okay, we work for several companies, obviously the well-known brand, especially from Polish market. But if you are interested in Polish R&D results, okay, also what's going on in the early stage investment in Poland, you can Google these companies that we have here, which is Gift, DBI, XTPL, SenseDX, and so on. You can see how, well, these are the results from technology transfer, technology commercialization from the universities, from the university people to the business. Okay, there was and there still is a huge gap between the universities and the scientific institutions where the science is being made or is being pursued, I'd say, and the business, where the inventions, R&D is much needed to develop, okay, to stay competitive, and we are trying to make them talk, okay, and some good things happen then. As myself, I'm CFA charter holder and licensed investment advisor. I worked for 14 years now in finance and corporate finance services and investments. And yeah, I'm also involved in some academic issues in CFA Society Poland. Also, I'm an active member. And what is most important for you on this slide is this number, because this is almost the last number on this presentation. Okay, so I won't focus on details. I won't focus on formulas and so on. Okay, I want to talk to you about, well, talk with you hopefully about what's involved in technology valuation, in intellectual assets valuation, that is not involved, that you forget about it. Okay, you had it at school. You forget it about when you are valuing, I don't know, financial instruments, stocks, debt instruments, whole businesses, and so on, okay? There are some things that You don't even consider things when you are doing the usual business valuation, okay? So what we will discuss today, first of all, intellectual assets, what are they, okay? How to classify or how to identify them. What can we value or can we assess the value, and what we cannot. Yeah, how the transaction environment influences the scenario, the topic. Standards of value, I hope that you remember from the universities there was probably a couple of chapters in the book about standards of value. Just skip them. Yeah, we have market value, which is the best standard. That's what the US industry tells us. Valuation methods, the most down-to-earth actually chapter here. Value sources and attribution. So is the IP essential or is it additional to value creation in the business? Okay, this is a very important question that you have to find the answer case by case, and each time the answer will be different. And the risk assessment. Risk assessment, we had a very interesting presentation about the risk modeling. It works very well for developed businesses, for traded companies and traded instruments. It doesn't work very well for early stage businesses when the risk, well, we are not talking about the risk actually, we are talking about uncertainty, okay? And risk you can quantify, which you have methods to quantify, and for the uncertainty it's not that easy. But still, we have to do something about it if we are, or we are required to estimate the value of some asset, okay? And well, fortunately, in Poland for several years now, the clients are somehow aware that putting the value of some risky or some very uncertain business into one number is futile, okay? Actually, what industry learned that we are talking about some ranges of value, okay? Obviously, we look at different scenarios, and they don't expect us to just have one number, okay? They accept that we have some range of value, that the true value is in it. Okay, what we should consider in valuation, okay? Well, this is my history, because I started with evaluating shares, which were publicly traded stock on a stock exchange. So, well, I started from this type of business. Okay. Then, if you go more into M&A transaction to the investment business, you are trying to evaluate the value of the whole business. Okay. So you are taking into account things like control, things like financing, things like people in the business. Okay. If you are dealing with huge corporations that are publicly traded, you do not concentrate on the people in the businesses, okay? Usually you are focused on the numbers, you obviously know who is the manager and so on and so on, but you don't think, and probably this is true, they don't influence the businesses that much, okay? Provided they are not, I don't know, Steve Jobs or whatever, right? Then we entered like separate assets valuation, okay? Because, well, this is what the market demanded, okay? They didn't want to estimate the value of the whole business. They wanted to estimate the values of, I will put real estate aside, okay, because we had a very interesting presentation on the real estate, but they have, I don't know, some divisions, some specific assets as far as intellectual capital, intellectual property is concerned, and they wanted to have the valuation of the asset themselves, okay. One more time, with the intellectual assets, we had to take more and more aspects or elements into account that we didn't consider necessary for the business valuation, okay? For example, for the business valuation, we'll get to the market value soon, okay? So what can be valued, okay? What separate assets? Obviously, this is not the whole spectrum of possible valuation subjects, okay? But these are the subjects that we met, that we encountered during our practice, okay? So first of all, you have the brand, but you have also trademark, you have also the company's reputation, then you have the things involved with the research and development process. So research, R&D result, know-how, knowledge, patent application, technology. You have copyright. Okay, for example, we had this example when I don't know what you heard. It was a loud case in Poland last autumn, where do you know The Witcher? Yeah, I know because the U.S. took The Witcher and made profit of it. Okay, there was this case. It's actually not U.S. but U.S. market. Yeah, but the Polish company, which is already in WIG20, which is the blue chip index in Warsaw. What happened? The author of the books where The Witcher was first present, he made the he allowed to company to license the whole world, the fantasy world that he created, and okay, he took fixed a lump sum of money. Okay, what's more, he said that he don't want to have any fee that is based on the revenues because he doesn't believe that the video games will sell and so on. So he just wanted to take the fixed amount of money. Okay. After several years, after Witcher 2, Witcher 3, and so on, so huge market success, his lawyers said, "Excuse us, but you are making loads of money on our IP, our client's IP, obviously." Okay, and they obviously went through the legislation. They found something that they thought that it might be useful. Okay, they just demanded 60 million euro because of the IP infringement. Well, actually, this case is being settled now, so probably there will be some fee, but not the 60 million. Okay, so as you can see, these notions, these ideas, there are different ideas. Okay, sometimes, for example, knowledge. Okay, what is the knowledge? What is the knowledge? Can you sell the knowledge? You can sell the book. Yeah, you can put your knowledge into the book and you can sell it. What's more? You cannot sell the knowledge. Okay, for example, know-how. Know-how is specified at least in Poland, in the legislative acts. Okay, you know what the know-how is. There have to be met some conditions to have the know-how. Okay, you have the R&D results. So if you do some research, you have the result. I don't know, be it some scientific paper or be it some methodology that it can be used in the business. This is also the asset that can be valued. Okay, trademark. I believe you know the trademark valuation. Okay, because trademarks are more often traded in reality. Okay, trademark is not the same as the brand. Okay, be careful here, because brand is probably something more. Okay, so okay, you have some notions. Some of them are defined. Some of them are easy to identify. Some of them are not. Okay, intangible asset. This is like from financial reporting. There's a definition what can or what cannot be intangible asset. Okay, for example, the trademark. Is trademark the intangible asset? Yes or not? Who thinks that trademark is the intangible asset? Who thinks that it is not intangible asset? Okay. Because, for example, under Polish Financial Reporting Act, okay, it depends. If it's created inside the company, it's not intangible asset. It's not in the balance sheet. If it's if it's purchased on the market, somebody else created and we are buying it, it's on the balance sheet. Okay. But if you are looking at the asset itself, well, does it influence if it has value or not? Where it came from? No, it's just what you can do with it and what benefits can you generate using the asset. Okay? Intellectual property, which is the other notion, okay? Intellectual property is also defined by the law. Okay, there are some specific conditions that have to be met. Okay, intellectual capital, I'd say this is the most wide definition. Okay, because there are some things that are not they are not described by the legal regulations. They are not easy to be transferred. Okay, so you cannot sell them like with the knowledge. Okay, or for example with the reputation. We had this case. It was like old case in Poland. There was a company which was called Zielona Budka, okay? That was the company that was producing ice cream, okay? They had this chain of outlets and so on. They were producing and selling ice creams. And once they just decided to sell the business. Well, the owners decided to sell the business, including the right to the trademark and so on, the whole production facilities, but the trademark was the most important there, okay? Obviously, everybody knew that, well, there was a history behind the brand, okay? There was Mr. Grycan, who was the inventor, and so on and so on. He was also the chief of the company. And then, when he sold the business, he obviously had non-competitive clause signed, so he couldn't produce ice creams for, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And the last day when this non-competitive agreement was expiring, he made this, what was the name? Well, he publicly said that he had new factory ready and he will be selling ice cream under his own name. Okay? And if you look at the Polish market now, the Grycan, like the brand for the ice cream, it's a very successful brand, and you couldn't find probably Zielona Budka on the market because they sold, well, the investor acquired the right to the trademark, but they couldn't acquire the right to the whole history because history was connected with the guy, okay? So he had the reputation. So it was, okay, somebody was buying ice cream, said, okay, it's Zielona Budka, this is very good, but this is not Zielona Budka by Grycan because he left the company, okay? It's like with the Apple, okay? Steve Jobs died, okay? So this is not the Apple that it used to be, okay? This is just the Apple managed by another person. This is not the Apple by the Steve Jobs, okay? So sometimes you can buy the asset, sometimes it cannot be bought, it cannot be acquired. So what conditions have to be met in order to for us to be able to estimate the value, to calculate the value of the asset? Okay, first of all, the asset has to exist. Okay, it sounds trivial, but it's true. Sometimes, especially when we are dealing with the research projects, okay, when there is some research being done, and maybe finally there will be a patent, or maybe the invention will not be patented. It will be only protected by the know-how. So sometimes the scientific institutions, they want to evaluate, they want to have the value of the asset that doesn't exist. For example, the result of the future research. Okay, obviously there is no such thing, so we cannot estimate the value now. We can forecast the value in the future once it's ready, but we don't know whether the research will be successful. Okay. What's more? Yeah, well, that would be the first thing. So you have to be sure that the asset exists. Okay, in real, it can be like it cannot be hypothetical asset. Okay, it has to exist. You have to be able to somehow experience the asset. Okay, so there is a problem with the knowledge one more time. Okay, you cannot like check what is the knowledge. So what exactly is in this idea, okay? Second of all, the asset has to be precisely specified, okay? So if you are talking about all the R&D results, okay? If you are talking about some methodologies, some ways to, I don't know, to get some molecule, chemical molecule, for example, okay? You have to have like exact borders what is being valued, okay? For example, if you have the molecule and its application on its know-how concerning one given application, okay? You cannot take into account possible developments of this molecule, okay? So tests in different applications, for example, okay? You have to specify this is this molecule in these applications, I don't know, for example, in cosmetics only, okay? And the third thing, the asset has to be transferable, okay? As with the Zielona Budka case, well, the trademark was transferred, okay, but the brand wasn't transferred entirely, okay? So you have to be sure that you can, even if it's hypothetical, even if you don't want to make a transaction, you have to be sure that the transaction can be legally made, okay? Again, knowledge cannot be sold. Know-how can be sold. Know-how is when you have the knowledge on the paper, okay, or an electronic version or whatever, okay? But you know exactly what you can use it. If somebody is going to acquire it, he's able to use it, okay? Or is able to find on the market, on the general market, everything that he needs to use it. For example, we have some chemical invention, okay? So I'm not a chemist, so probably I will not be able to use it. But I can find on the market people that are able to use the molecule and to make the product, okay? So, well, there are some groups, okay? Obviously, you can find different, classifications. This is not my target here. I don't want to make like scientifically proven classification, but there are some groups of the assets that we are talking about. First of all is the brand and all that is involved. So trademark, sometimes somebody wants to estimate the value of the logotype, okay? So they just invented logotype. The name, okay? Sometimes this is the name of the person. There was a second case in which there was this jewelry company which was called W. Crook, which was the initial and the name of the inventor, and the company was taken over hostilely, and everybody knew that this is not the owner. Okay, the owner changes, but still the company was such a big company, and this production process and brand management was actually distinguished from the owner. So that was slightly different case than with the Grydzan. Copyrights, okay? Sometimes you don't have the trademark yet because trademark has to be registered, okay? In Poland, at least, to call it trademark, okay? Sometimes you just have the copyrights to some product or the result of some, for example, designing work, okay? They can be sold. Obviously, there are two types of copyrights. These are material and personal copyrights. Okay, the personal copyrights that you can say that you are the author, and the material copyrights that you can draw benefits from having it. Okay, so you can just use it. So first group, this is the brand and all things connected to the brand. Technology, in general meaning, where you can have a patent, if it's patented by the patent office. You can also have the patent application, when you put the motion to the patent office, but they didn't decide yet if it's truly a patent already, okay? Then you have the know-how. For example, in chemistry there is also a situation when, for example, 3M, the global company, they usually don't patent their inventions, okay? They just, obviously they don't tell how it's being done, because they don't want to make it easier for the competition. Because if you are patenting something, you have to say how it's being done, okay? So they can find another way to do the same, okay? So you have to be careful with this patenting. Okay, the knowledge, there's a case in Poland because we deal with the universities. There are many professors who know how to do some things in the physics, chemistry, biology, and so on, okay? And they sometimes try to sell this knowledge, okay? Like, okay, get me the financing to the project, I will put the knowledge inside, okay? And when we are asking, okay, what knowledge we are talking about? Do you have any patents and so on? Like hard knowledge that we know that if you are unable to perform, I don't know, you are too old, you had an accident and so on, the company still will be able to use the knowledge, okay? So this is sometimes problematic. Yeah, the client involved, okay? So what about the client? You can sell a deal, okay? For example, you have some long-term agreement and you can like sell the rights to draw benefits from this agreement. It can be sold. Long-term relationship with the client, it's not that easy to sell, okay? Obviously it's problematic who actually has this relationship, be it the company, the owner, or the sales force. Okay, this is not easy to identify, okay? The client list, you can sell the client list. Yeah, this is just database with the names, with the addresses, telephone numbers, interest, needs, and so on, yeah? It can be traded. So, if it can be traded, well, we are expected to be able to value it, okay, to estimate the value. Lead, so just one single lead, if you are like, familiar with the interest businesses, okay? Maybe it's not that obvious now, but like a couple of years ago, it was all about leads, okay? Just find me the person who's interested in a given product. If you look at the retail, for example, the internet, it's all about the leads. Yeah, the network, okay? So we are talking about the people. Yeah, we are going to, because we have the client. If we are a big company, the clients, especially if we are talking B2B, businesses, they are the clients of the salesman, not necessarily of the company. We had this transaction once when the company wanted to, he wanted to buy, so the other, they trying to think whether they want to sell the whole sales structure, okay, with the contacts. That was a specific case, I'd say. Okay, you can ask, what about synergies? What about experience, structure, sales force, the business organism? Can you sell it? Can you value it? Okay, well, I'd say it's difficult. Okay, it's difficult to, when you look the slide before, if we go back to the slide before, you have to specify exactly what is the asset. Okay, if we are talking about the business experience, come on. I'd say that if somebody finds the model to directly identify and describe business experience, yeah, the Nobel is guaranteed, right? So all the other aspects, because these are factors that influence the value of the businesses, okay? But they are on a goodwill, okay? Like if you go through from the accounting side, this is just the goodwill, because what's the most important in business, they are not these separate assets. These are connections, okay, between the whole group of assets. Okay, let's assume that we know what we are going to value. Okay, we know what is the asset, what is the state of the asset, who is the owner. Yeah, who is the owner? That is sometimes interesting because especially if you have the scientific institute, you have the researchers who actually invented it, and the question is to whom belongs the right to the invention. We had this case. I had this professor. I have to say that this is one of the most colorful example, because imagine the room, like old university room, when there is a professor who's in this armchair, he's smoking a pipe, okay, and he says, yeah, but this invention actually that was the result of our off-hours meeting. We just met after the work and we think, what else? Yeah, maybe let's do something like this. Okay, so, and he claimed that it was actually, okay, it was like his personal work, not his work as a professor at the university. Yeah, imagine he's like smoking this pipe, small room, some doctoral students, they're like silent as mice and so on. That was really, really enjoyable, I'd say. Okay. Now, so let's assume that we know who is selling and who is the owner. What are the reasons to value intellectual capital assets? Okay. I named 3 groups, okay? These are transactional reasons, quasi-transactional reasons, and non-transactional. I would start with the last one, the taxes, okay? Well, it's not the situation now because they changed the law, but a couple of years ago, it was very popular in Poland to take, for example, the trademark, to sell it to the to an entity outside the company, and then to lease it, okay? Just to decrease the tax obligations. Yeah, but they changed it, okay? But they were trying to do it with different assets, okay? So the taxes, obviously. The financial reporting, it should be ISRF, okay? Sorry, IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards. At the first presentation, you mentioned the property price allocations. Okay, so if you are acquiring the business, you can not only identify the assets that are on the balance sheet, but also you can identify the assets that are not on the balance sheet, especially intangible assets. For example, brand, because now you have the transaction, the brand is acquired, you can have it on the books. Okay. You can have other cash-generating units, which they can correspond with different business lines and different, for example, technologies. Okay, they're subject to impairment test, for example. So, but you can like increase your balance sheet, the balance sheet amount. Okay, to have better, for example, financial indicators, right? For legal issues. Yeah, this is the most popular case when you have 2 legal departments that they are trying to deal with the. For example, if somebody is using your brand without acknowledgement, without your permission, okay, you can sue him, and then the question is, okay, but how much do you want? How much do you expect for him to pay? So you have to estimate the value of the trademark of the brand that he infringed, okay, so to be able to quantify your expectations. For quasi-transactional reasons, when there is no transaction, but there is something similar, okay? For example, if you raise the capital, the investor asks, what is your contribution, okay? What are you putting into the company, okay? So contribution, this is the first thing. Collateral, for example, if you want to have the financing, okay, they say, okay, we will invest, but it has to be pledged with the collateral, in this case, for example, patent, okay? And the transactional issues, sale, obviously, like direct sale, also commercialization processes when the entities, usually scientific institutions, they make spin-off, and this asset is being put into the balance sheet of the company. And I think that the mostly popular in this case is the licensing, because technologies and trademark also, they are not always sold, but they are licensed. Okay, so the ownership belongs to the inventor, but somebody else is using it in the business. Yeah, standards of value. Yeah, that's the thing that I want to discuss, because this is not so obvious. This slide. This is the efficient market. Okay, so we have many buyers, and each of the buyers have their own investment value. Okay, so what is the value for me? How can I use the stock? Okay, how can I use the business? What benefits I can generate using the asset? Okay, we have obviously sellers. Okay, on the stock exchange, you have buyers, you have sellers. Each of them, hypothetically, has their own assessment of the value. Well, they check whether they can deal with each other, and at the end, what you get is the market value. That's the theory. If you go to the book, to the economics book, to the book of finance, you will find this. Okay, you have indefinite number of buyers, indefinite number of sellers. They talk, they check, and then you have the market value, which is on the market. Okay. Timing, the transactions are immediate. As far as the cost of the transaction is not significant, so we have the efficient market. Okay. For the intellectual assets, there is no such thing as an efficient market. Okay. We have couple potential buyers, smaller, bigger. We have one seller, yeah, because these assets are usually unique. You cannot find different sellers of the same asset, okay? And you have this investment value, which is not actually the answer to the question, how much can I get from it? It's more like, how much did I spend on it to just not to lose on the transaction, okay? Especially if you are talking about the public money, the professor got some grant, okay, got some funding from the state. They invented the invention, and okay, they cannot sell it at the price lower than the money that they spent, because otherwise they will go to the jail, okay, or somehow be responsible, okay. So you can talk. The seller is talking with the small, let's say, local player. He can talk with the global player. This line should be somehow dotted, but you cannot see it, okay? Sometimes going to another buyer is costly, for example. You have to find a way to find the buyer, okay? It costs money, okay? So as far as the timing, so you have the market value, okay? Let's say that this market value, because in my opinion, doesn't fulfill the definition of the market value. You cannot have you don't have the efficient market. And as far as the timing and cost is concerned, okay, for example, for technologies, you have the business due diligence, you have the technology due diligence, you have to find the financing, you have the legal constraint. Sometimes you have to find the consent from the minister, for example. In Poland, if you want to sell some technology, some patent that was invented in the scientific institution, okay, if its value is higher than, as I believe, 100,000 zlotys, you have to have the consent from the ministry, okay, because this is publicly owned, so the minister has to agree to sell. Obviously, you have to have the explanation. Why are you doing this? So, important factors for the valuation. Who is buying? Why the buyer characteristics are important for us? Sorry? Yeah, because, for example, if you have the global company, they can make more from the same patent, okay, than the small local player, okay? Therefore, the value will be different, okay? You can expect different, you can expect that the global company will be able to pay more, okay, because their potential benefits are higher. Who is selling? Yeah, who is selling? This is obviously the case whether the entity that is selling is able, for example, to provide some additional help with the implementation company, for example. If it's the creator, or if it's just the institution, they have some obsolete patent, they just want to sell it. How the asset will be used? It's a matter of application. If it's the matter of the industry, sometimes if you read something about the patent wars, the asset will not be used. Okay, we had this case. Well, we have it also yet. When there was this medical device, it was patented, and there was actually two business scenarios. Okay, either we find the investor, and we make the business. Okay, so we try to produce the product, we want to employ people and so on. And the other approach was, there was this competitor from Israel, okay, and our patent was better. So the other solution was to block their activities, okay, obviously to make them, make the transaction with us, okay. Is the asset still creator dependent or not? This is an important case because First of all, I said that the asset should be specified, okay, and identified. We have to be sure that if we get some chemistry guys, some technologies, they will be able to deal with this patent. Okay, that's the first thing. A second thing, maybe it can be improved. Okay, especially if we are not talking about patent, which is usually or should be somehow defined. Okay, but if you are talking about the technology, which is like wider aspect, wider asset, maybe it can be improved, it can be developed, and then the creator, if he or she is involved, it's well, it provides some development scenarios, okay, or not. Yeah, sometimes creators are well, the inventions are better off if there are no creators on board. What is compensation scheme? Okay, so how the transaction look like? It's really rarely for, well, maybe for brands, but for technologies, it's usually not like direct sale with the lump sum payment, okay? There are different solutions, for example, when the inventor with the creators are receiving stocks in the business, okay, instead of money. Is financing ready? Because most of these projects, they are not, well, they are early stage investments, okay? They are businesses that are not yet ready. You have to be sure that the financing is there, okay? Because if you are not able to provide the financing, or you are not sure that the market will provide the financing, well, it won't be, well, the risk obviously increases. Yeah, we talk about real estate. Just one very important thing here, because real industry, well, the Olena, which had the previous presentation, she mentioned highest and best use. Okay, this is the same aspect for the technologies. So you have to find a scenario which is legally permissible, so it can be done legally. It's physically possible. So, for example, to find the entity that is going to use the asset and generate value. Financially feasible, so that's, I think, obvious, and maximally productive, okay? This is somehow problematic because, for example, if you have the local player, when you know the management, you can easily access them. You can show them the presentation of your IP and so on. It's very easy to do that. But if you are talking about the global players, reaching the decisions there, well, it takes time and sometimes it's impossible, okay? The question, for example, if you are talking about the previous thing, if the creator is still involved, okay? Sometimes we had this case that there were actually 3 potential buyers in the whole world. There were 3 potential industry players that could buy it and they could use in this production, this chemical invention. And actually the professor who was inventor, he actually knew the people who were working in technical departments in these businesses because they attended the same conferences, the same scientific conferences, so he knew them. So it was easy to access, okay? But the question is whether, well, that was actually, well, one of the biggest problem. We can have quick, safe, and usually inexpensive transaction with a small local industry player, but the applications were limited, okay? They had usually only several products that could use the technology. Or you can have time and cash consuming transaction, which is risky, it's difficult to do, but with the global player. And by global player, I mean wide spectrum of products. I mean distribution network, which is also a very important thing in this case, okay? So the answer is not always easy. Which scenario should we pursue as far as the DCF, for example, is concerned? As far as the transaction still, as I said, licensing is larger scale of licensing than direct sale, okay? If we are talking about the brands, and if we are talking about the technologies, okay? Usually technologies are not sold like just selling the rights to the technology or to the patent, okay? They are usually licensed. The license can be exclusive or non-exclusive. It also influences your cash flow projections, okay? Whether you are licensing to one entity, but he's paying more, well, usually on the market it's like twice the non-exclusive transaction, non-exclusive license. Obviously, the finding the entities who will license, it's also costly, okay? The license can have upfront fee, so lump sum at the very beginning or not. It can have fixed or variable fee for several years. And this fee can be dependent on the sales or on the milestones that technology will achieve. For example, some specific amount of revenues generated, okay? The creator involvement also influences the price of the transaction. Sometimes when you are selling if you are buying the technology, you also sign the agreement with the creator that he will help in implementation and he will help with the development, okay? Obviously, if the inventor is the professor, he will benefit from this agreement, and the selling entity is the scientific institution. They have different interests, okay? Because scientific institution wants as high licensing fee as possible, and the professor wants his remuneration to be as high as possible. Sometimes he is deciding person for both sides. This is problematic, obviously. That's why with the consent of the ministry and so on. And lump sum versus earnouts. Sometimes the seller, they are not remunerated at the very beginning at the transaction, but only when the asset actually proves to be beneficial for the buyer. So they have some future payments which are conditional on the business of the buyer. As far as the valuation methods, okay, I don't know how much time do we have. Did I cross the line already? Sorry. So two steps before you go into the methods. First of all, are you trying to estimate the value of the asset as a standalone asset or as a foundation of business project? Okay, standalone asset can be used by any buyer from the industry. Okay, so it's like finished technology, it's like recognizable brand and so on, or trademark. And if it's not that useful on the market, you can treat it as a foundation for the business project. The approach is slightly different. And second step, if we are talking about this scenario, are other assets needed to make business, are they in place? Okay, so for example, if I were supposed to buy the technology, I will not have other assets in place, okay? Financing, production line, people, salesmen, and so on, okay? So if you want to discuss the technology as a foundation for a business project, you have to be sure that you are able to acquire other assets that you need, okay? For example, the distribution channels, okay? Because the problem in Poland, maybe in the Polish scientific world, is that the inventors usually think that if their invention allows industry players to produce something, I don't know, 5% cheaper, there should be a queue to their office from the industry they want to buy it, okay? But it's not true, okay? They expect that the whole value stems from the invention itself, okay? But it's usually not true, because you have to have the other things that I will discuss in a second, okay? As far as the valuation methods, cost approach, I know cost approach is like second year of studies, okay? And we decided, and the US market decided like many years ago, that it shouldn't be used in the valuation, because there is so much more in business than the cost that you spend on the asset, okay? Relative approach and income approach. These are three mostly used approaches, and we'll discuss shortly them. Cost approach. Why am I talking about the cost approach? Because sometimes it's a very good measure to correspond with your models, okay? You can always you can ask yourself a question, okay, how much should I pay to recreate the same asset, okay? First of all, is it possible to replicate the asset? Okay, obviously it doesn't have to be like identical, but it should provide the same economical benefits. When can we use cost approach? And obviously, sorry, the second question, are expenses good indicator of value? The question is, when can we use the cost approach? For example, for trademark. Any ideas? Okay, let's say that I want to create the trademark, okay? I get my colleague who is going to make the design, then I'll take it and put it to the patent office, they will register it, okay? How much did I pay? I have to pay it to my colleague, I have to pay all fees to the patent office. That's the costs, these are the costs that I spent on this, okay? So what is the value of the asset? And I'm coming to you. Do you want to buy the trademark? They say, okay, how much do you want? I say, I want 1 million zlotys, or $1 million, okay. And you say, but we can, what is the trademark? Okay, we can recreate similar trademark, like spending only money for the design and for the patent protection, okay? Why? Because my trademark is just the trademark, it's not a brand, okay? People on the market, they don't know that this trademark corresponds with some quality product and so on, okay? So if we are on the very early stage of development for trademarks, for example, the cost approach, I'm not saying that this is the only method, but it can be used as a measure to verify your, obviously sometimes some activities were made. For example, we had a conference, we had some leaflets and so on and so on. So some activities, business activities were done, but it's rarely the case. Okay? For the software, for example, if software doesn't have something unique in it, it's just the question how much time and money do you have to spend to get the same software, okay, or similar or software that will do the same. Also, not as a major valuation method, but as a way to verify whether the amount that is expected, for example, from the creators is reasonable. Okay. For know-how, well, it's not always all of these are not always easy. Okay, but sometimes when the know-how is not very developed, okay, if you can assume that just the technical department is able to recreate some methodologies to do something, we also encountered such case that there is some procedure, which is the know-how, okay? It allows you to do something technologically, but actually there was the result of the trial and error, like for several hundred times, okay? So you can always think how can I get the same or similar methodology, but not by acquiring, but creating it, okay? Relative approach. Relative approach is difficult. What do you need for the relative approach to work efficiently? You have to have comparable assets. And I assure you, well, I was involved in more than 200 technology valuations. Each technology, patent, know-how, whatever, they are different. They have different aspects. So similarity or comparability, not really. Separately traded, because for the relative approach, you have to have some market when these technologies are being traded. There is no market for technologies like where they are sold, okay? Usually they are sold as a part of the businesses, for example, when there's something more. But yeah, this is also a problem. Obviously, in relative approach, you have to find a large peer group to be able to draw conclusions. And on efficient markets, we discussed that already, okay? But there are licensing fees, okay? And they are very useful to give you the comparability, to relativity, okay? Because also, Polish regulations, usually they expect you to use relative approach, okay? Because it was also always used, the relative approach was always used for the businesses, so let's like copy-paste to the technologies and so on, okay? Yeah, and the licensing market allows you to provide this relative approach because you can go through the databases like royalty search, royalty source, royalty stat. Okay, there are different databases when you can find that the average, for example, the average licensing fee for chemical inventions like 5% of the revenues, for example. Okay. Then you have to go through the profit split, look at the margins generated and so on. But you can like start from the licensing fee. Obviously, I said that no technologies are the same. So you have to take into account, for example, for brands, this is the brand strength. Okay, there are some measurements. If you look for the brand strength standards of valuation, okay, or valuation procedures, there is, if you look, for example, sorry, I forgot the name now. This is one step in the valuation, okay? Because if the brand is better, okay, I don't know, more history, better connotation with the quality and so on, this licensing fees are higher and so on, okay? The first technology, the same. If it provides you with low benefits, probably this license fee is lower. For the income approach, we have to build the reasonable business case, okay? As with the real estate, it has to be physically possible, financially feasible, and maximally productive, okay? So you have to be sure that you include the cost of people who will sell it and supervise the production, administration, and so on. So you have to take all these aspects into account. Main problems: who will be the implementing entity? Okay, so what is the business case? Be it selling to the industry player, selling or licensing to the industry player, or are we doing the spin-off? If we are doing the spin-off, obviously the problem is with the people. Who is going to manage it? Do they have the managerial experience? And Salesforce and so on. What applications? Okay, what products will be generated or produced using this technology, or sold under this brand? When the product will be ready? Okay, we'll discuss it in a second because this is a very important thing. On which markets we are going to go. Remember that, for example, if you patent the invention, okay, you are patenting on specific markets, okay? It also takes money. And how? Okay, so what is the whole business model? Marketing, sales, supply, employees, and the rest of the business issues that you are familiar with. And the most important thing, okay, we call it the value sources challenge, because if you have this business case, you have to answer yourself a question. Does this value stem from the asset that you are estimating value or not, or from different things? So as you know, the value of businesses are determined by different aspects: employees, marketing, cash, sales force, management. Obviously, if you ask the managers, the people in the business, the brand, the owners sometimes, yeah, the distribution channels. You know the Coca-Cola company? What is the most important asset for the Coca-Cola company? Sorry? Brand, distribution, any other ideas? Sorry? Know-how. Okay. So recipe, right? For the syrup, okay? Who thinks is the brand? Okay, who thinks this is what? Distribution network. Who thinks is the recipe? Who is asleep? What about the rest of the group? Okay, yeah, if you look at if you go to the industry segment that deals with the brands, they would say the brand, okay? Probably there is some true in it, but I think that the most important asset in the Coca-Cola business is the distribution channels. Okay, as you know, the Coca-Cola company doesn't sell the Coca-Cola only. And very interesting case in Poland. It was like several years ago. They had this bottled water which was called Bonaqua. Do you have Bonaqua in Ukraine? Yeah, we don't have Bonaqua in Poland. Yeah, it's in Slovakia, it's in Czech Republic, I checked, okay? But it's not in Poland. What happened? They found some bacteria in the production line for the Bonaqua, okay? It was obviously described in media heavily and so on. So they decided that they don't want to, I don't know, to take the brand and change the way that people are looking. They just skip the brand. They just put the Bonaqua in Poland to the trash bin, okay? They invented different brand, different trademark, which is called the Kropla Beskidu. What did they actually do? They went to the gastronomical businesses, they went to the retail, and they say one thing, okay? Take Bonaqua out of the fridge, put Kropla Beskidu in it. Okay, and Kropla Beskidu is the third best-selling bottled water in Poland. Okay, we don't have Bonaqua, sorry, if somebody likes, okay? Why were they able to do that without putting like loads of money into the marketing? Because they had the distribution channels. You know what's the motto, was the phrase that they pursue in the Coca-Cola? To put the Coca-Cola into the arm's reach of every person in the world. And they mean it, actually. There are places in the Middle East, for example, where it's easier to find the Coca-Cola than the bottled water. Okay? So if we are talking about this value attribution, actually, we have to verify whether we can attribute this is the part of the goodwill that is difficult to identify. Can we ascribe it to the brand itself? We had this company in Wrocław, actually, I'm from Wrocław, they wanted, for tax reasons and so on, they wanted the brand valuation, okay? So we made the brand valuation, the excessive earnings model that you mentioned before, and the value was very high, okay? And we thought, okay, something is wrong. So what is wrong? Because nobody's talking about the brand, nobody's from the clients, they usually, what is the source of the value? Because company was very good, okay, but there was something wrong with the brand, okay? So we did some brainstorming, and we figured out that it wasn't the brand that was the source of value. It was the localization of the outlets, okay? That was the case. The second case, we had this company also, tax reasons, they wanted to evaluate the value of the trademark, so we did the whole analysis and so on. There was one question that was very interesting. How did they acquire clients? Okay, because they had long-term relationship with the clients, which is usually good for the brand. But the problem is that they were selling to the state businesses, and there was also the tender. Okay, also many offers were gathered, and the cheapest one was winning. Okay, so actually brand was not important there. What was important was the fact that they were meeting all the conditions to be able to start in this tender offer, right? Okay, how much time do we have? Risk assessment. This is problematic because actually I should say not the risk but the uncertainty assessment, because we have to deal with it. Okay, it's not that we skip the risk side. Okay, you cannot do something like this in finance. Okay, what is important that the risk of intangible asset is usually higher than the risk of the business. Okay, because of diversification and so on and so on. Okay, so we know that the weighted average cost of capital is not sufficient as a discount rate. Okay, there are two solutions that are accepted on the market. First of all, the build-up method. Okay, where you can put additional premium for identified risk that you find, okay? Be it legal, technology, human capital, whatever, okay? The problem is that there is no sufficient data to estimate this premium, okay? Usually there is some judgment involved, that's just the method that is used, okay? The second is weighted average return on asset, okay? This is most commonly used when you try to estimate what is the value, what is the discount rate for the business as a whole. And then you look at the balance sheet, okay? What assets are inside? You take the expected returns for monetary assets, for tangible fixed asset, and so on. And like the surplus stems from the intangible assets, okay? Yeah, as far as the technological risk, which is the most important, well, one of the most important here, what if the technology is not ready yet, okay? For example, you have the patent, but it's not like you can like get the patent, put to the factory, and you have the product, okay? There are some implementations, ways, and so on, okay? So we have 2 periods, okay? We are talking about the risk, how to include the risk in the calculations, okay? We have development period, and once it's developed, we have the business usage, okay? So in both periods, we have the business risk, okay? But what's more, we have the technology risk in the first period, how to deal with it, with this risk. Well, it's easy, yeah, because business risk is involved in the weighted average cost of capital, okay? And for the technology risk, we have the probability of success. You have to estimate the probability of success to get the expected result, okay? One thing, if you are taking the expected result, it means that you are wrong, okay? Because in technologies, there are usually 2 scenarios, success and failure. If you are talking the average, well, whatever happens, it will not be the average, okay? It will either succeed or not. Yeah, but you have to quantify it, right? So, as far as the probability of success, it's simple. Either it will work or not. So probability is 50%. Yeah, it's not so simple, okay? It's not so simple. Obviously, this is the crucial parameter here, so we have to be careful. There are 2 approaches. Either you have the data, okay? For example, you can sometimes, well, it's not easy, rarely happens, but sometimes you can find the data. So how many technologies actually succeeded? So they survived the development and you got the technology ready. For example, a couple of years ago, the British agency that was financing startups, they provided statistics in which industries, chemistry, IT, and so on, how many projects actually fulfilled this invention at the very beginning, how many of them actually succeeded in making business, okay? But if you find such a data, you are a very, very lucky person, okay? Usually it's not that easy. You have to try to estimate it in a different way. There are 2 measures that I would like to show you if you want to read more, okay? Is the technology readiness level, okay? So obviously there are some levels starting from 1 to 9, as I believe, okay? The higher number, the closer you are to having the technology ready, meaning the lower risk factors you are influenced by, okay? So up level 1, you have the phenomenon observed and described. Scientific research for applications just begins, okay? So it's not ready yet. You don't know whether it will be actually useful in the technology. Maybe the things that you just observed, that they work, they will not work efficiently. They will not be able to provide in large scale, and so on, okay? Up to the level 9, when technology works in a real environment and the scale that you expect it to work, okay? So the higher the level, sorry, these are the numbers that I mentioned. That one was supposed to be the last, okay? But you have the numbers here. So the higher the number, the lower the risk, okay? So this is the technology readiness level. And you have also the market readiness level, because even if you have the technology ready, it doesn't mean that you have the product that you are able to sell to the market, okay? So there are 10 levels, as I believe. From the first level, which you have basic production assumptions and material characteristics, you know them, up to level 10, when you have full-scale production, and what's more, unit cost is a target level, okay? So you optimized the whole production and and now you know what you are doing with this, with your product, right? Yeah. That's all from me. Thank you for attention, for involvement, raising hands, and so on. If you have any questions, thank you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them on the forum or in the after during the break. Any questions? Yeah, the first. Yeah, it's like the small tradition here, as I believe.
Yeah, just didn't want to let you go without being asked a question.
Sure.
One thing that I didn't see in your presentation, when you value the intellectual property rights or some patented know-how, how do you value the competition? Because, for example, 3 years ago, Google has acquired there was famous acquisition, a Ukrainian startup doing the face recognition, Vudel. Okay. Everybody was here crazy that, oh, Google is buying Ukrainian startups, but it turned out that that year Google bought like 5 or 6 startups doing face recognition, probably just because they were building their own face recognition system. So in this case, it's very hard to find something very unique. I mean, in the current world, everybody's working on similar tasks, doing similar inventions. I mean, in one business can cost differently if you buy it alone or with a couple of more competitors.
Okay, thank you. This is a great question. 2 things, okay? Actually, no, 2 market segments. Digital world and the analog world, okay? As far as the digital world, IoT, mobile, smartphones, and so on, all the aspects, I agree with you. So, well, we also say that if we are able to, well, if you are able to, we are talking to the creators. If you are able to do it, like on the computer with the code and so on, there is like infinite number of Chinese people who is able to do it as well. Okay, but they work overnight. Do you? Okay, so that's the first question. Yeah, as far as the digital world, I agree that nothing is unique. You have to, if you are talking about the business cases, then you have to look at the competition. You have to have some partner that you are dealing with, and you just well, we want to verify whether we are close enough to having the product, because this is what actually is important for Google. They take, well, for Google maybe they want to create on their own, okay, but for example, in the Silicon Valley, for the investors, they don't invest in one team dealing with the problem. They invest in 10 teams. And the question, well, the answer is easy, okay? Who's the first with the product gets the second tranche of the financing, okay? That's it. But obviously, it gives us some problem with the valuation for the business case. Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, I agree. It's not easy. And as far as the non-digital world is concerned, it's easier. It's easier because it's easier to, well, we usually, from the investing side, if we are engaging in the project, we usually try to find the industry player from the very beginning. Even if they don't acquire the business, the patent at the very beginning, they provide valuable insight how the technology should be developed, in which areas, which applications, and which should be skipped.
Grzegorz, one question. You mentioned in your presentation that the value of intangible asset depends on the buyer. But if the assignment consists of valuation of the market value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the value depends on the buyer. The value depends on the ways how the asset will be used. Okay. If we are talking about the market value, okay, if we are in the project as an independent advisor, we have to find the market value, or we have to find the market value for the tax reasons, for the financial reporting reasons, and so on. We don't only check who is the buyer, but what buyers are available on the market. Okay, so we are not taking the global player We are not taking the top 3 global players if there are many players on the market. We just try to find the average business. Sorry? Typical, yeah, typical, let's say average business in the industry, okay? So, yeah, we have to not only have, okay, they say we have the one buyer that we are going to deal with it, okay? But our responsibility, our task is to check how the industry looks like, okay? What margins are average or typical in industry, not for given buyer, okay? Because our task is the market value, okay? We have to find the market value, not the exact price at which the transaction will take place, okay? You know the difference between the value and the price, obviously. Don't, yeah, as the title of my presentation, don't take it for granted, okay? You have to always think, especially if you are talking about the assets like intellectual capital assets.